And thanks for staying tuned to today's edition of GMN on NTA Network. Now, let's talk business. Total value of capital importation into Nigeria in third quarter of 2022 decreased by 5.42%. Details with Aleka Obalachi Arora on Business News.
Data from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that there was a 5.42% fall in capital importation in the first 9 months of 2022 compared to the same period in 2021. Capital importation tumbled from $4.51 billion in 2021 to $4.27 billion in 9 months of 2021. Foreign portfolio investments fell by 21%, while other investments dropped by 38.26%. However, foreign direct investments rose by 12.72% from $340.5 million in 9 months of 2021 to $383 million in 9 months of 2022. Analysis says that although the country is increasingly trading with emerging market economies, a larger part of its capital accounts is still exposed to Western economies. For instance, the United Kingdom accounted for more than half of the capital importation, while developed Western economies like the US, Belgium, France, and Germany also contributed significantly. Experts recommend that both the federal and state governments should create a conducive policy and regulatory environment that can attract foreign investment deals to achieve sustainable growth. Let's take a look at Tuesday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Opanachi Arua.
Thank you very much for the business news package. Coming up next is newspaper review.
And here we have Chukwudi Okole Ubaja, our newspaper reviewer. Chukwudi, it's good to see you. I've been around a while now. For a while.
I want to say that I have missed you. And, your absence, which was occasioned by the passing of a relative, is something that we really take heart about. Yes. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Yes. Kingsley would say we are the ones to welcome you, not the other way around. We have seized the initiative this morning. Good morning, Kingsley.
All right, Chukwudi, glad to see you too. Morning. Yes.
So we have two papers here, and of course I know Chukwudi has more details in terms of other newspapers to be reviewed this morning. I will have The Nation. Now, let's begin with The Nation, above the name flag of the newspaper for today. Wreck in governorship election, bribe mess. How attempt to smuggle ballot papers was foiled. That's on page 5. Government holds 10% hike in excise duty on non-alcoholic drinks. It's on page 7. Also on page 7 is neck goes tough on discos over meters. Now, below the name flag, and of course, the rest of the items here, the lead story goes this way. Federal government would be Darty's action treasonable. Two riders of that polls integrity intact. Shoyinka decries Darty's TV chart will be denied it all. You can read all of that on page 6, or rather page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Reps, others condemn interim government plot. That's also on page 4. BDC's aid treasury looting terrorism, says agency. It's also on page 4. Trump pleads not guilty to 34 felony counts. You can read that up on page 5. He appeared yesterday. Of course, he has become the first former president or serving president in America to be arraigned on criminal charges. All right, Kinsley.
Okay, we also have the leadership newspaper, and above the nameplate, the story you just read, it's also there. It says, Trump arraigned for 34 criminal charges, pleads not guilty. Bandits make fresh 100 million naira demand in Niger. And relief as federal government halts planned raise in excise duty on beverages. And Obi and Dati Ahmed kick over federal government's treason allegation. 54 days to inauguration, Tinubu hunts best brains and competence for appointments. Also there on the left-hand side, the APC governors meet today as race for 10th National Assembly leadership intensifies. Federal government opens second Niger bridge May 15th and completes local Oweto bridge. Gunmen abduct 8 students and village head's wife and son in Kaduna and Kano. Chukwudi, let's take some of those stories.
So, thank you. You dropped something on Trump finally being arraigned at a lower Manhattan court on a 34-count charge as the Americans get on the uncharted course or unbeaten territory of trying a former president. Uncharacteristically, he rather walked away without saying a lot. Without saying a lot, you know, one would have thought that, as usual, he would come out fuming. Maybe his lawyers are advising him. What is the message here? No one is above the law. That's actually why I'm taking it. Yeah, we do local stories most of the time here, but maybe it's worth saying that Finland yesterday became the 31st member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, as they joined in. And now the reason the Russians, part of the reasons the Russians invaded Ukraine was the growing presence of NATO close to Russia. Incidentally, with Finland joining, Finland has a 1,340-kilometer border with Russia. That's about 883 miles. More of NATO seems to have become the neighbors of Russia. I hope they handle that issue properly, because when they sneeze, we catch a cold here, as it seems. Back to our territory solidly, NEMA, that's the National Emergency Management Agency, receives another batch of 144 stranded Nigerians from authorities in Niamey, Niger Republic. NEMA Coordinator, Kano Territorial Office, Dr. Nuruddin Abdullahi, was said to have received these Nigerians whose trip to Europe had got frustrated at a stage. Sky Mali Airlines brought them back. Now, I want to say that economic vagrancy cannot be wished away in a situation of rising hardship. But when you hear about fellow Nigerians and other Africans trying to cross the Sahara Desert or get in risky migrant boats, you shudder what extent some of us are ready to go to seek the so-called greener pastures. I think these trips should be outrightly discouraged and possibly banned or halted. Leaving for a distant land as a stowaway in some cases isn't the most comforting news you want to hear about your fellow man. You know, the number of persons that have died in the process is actually becoming alarming, if you ask me. The returnees came back under the care of the International Organization for Migration. Now, it's not as if real succor will even become theirs on their return. So it is still a vicious cycle for them. As much as one recognizes that people could be driven to extreme action in some cases, a case needs to be made for attention to be given to people's mental health. Because to me, deciding to cross the Sahara Desert to get to North Africa and get yourself into Europe, or getting into those sometimes rickety migrant boats, can only happen from an unstable mind. So I am saying that a case to be made, you know, for examining people's mental health. The problem in Africa, Nigeria, is that you are not considered mad until you take off your clothes and get into one market. If you know the number of Nigerians, I've not carried out a survey, but we do hear things. My wife has a little issue concerning mental health. So when I got to Garki General Hospital, what the neurologist told me about people's mental health gives you real alarm about a job we are not handling. Mental health should be looked at. I consider that these people who are crossing the desert or getting in the migrant boats are essentially of unsound minds. So we need to take care of our people's health. Now, quickly to post-election, may I use that word brouhaha again? The federal government saying that Obi Dati's actions are somewhat touching on the treasonable. Polls integrity are deemed to be intact. Professor Ole Soyinka actually faulted the interview granted a TV station by Dati the other day. In all of these, gentlemen, my take is the case has gone to court. What other result or outcome are you expecting to get from statements, actions that seem to keep the outcome of the 2023 elections boiling forever? Is it that we don't have faith in our judicial system? When things get to court, people should, it's my opinion, should learn to sit back and give the men in the wig the benefit of the doubt. At least let them do their work. That helps a country grow. All this talk about certain things not being right, as if you're judging your own case from outside the court when the case is there. I think we should go a little easy on these things.
Well,
again,
I think that just a brief comment on that. There has been a conflation of two offenses under our criminal law. I hear it sometimes is a typical Nigerian predilection for exaggeration. Treason and treasonable felony are not the same offense. And they cannot be used interchangeably. But I see that used somewhat interchangeably. Oh, this person is committed treason. Treason is a capital offense. In other words, punishable
the death sentence
by death. And treasonable felony, max you get is life imprisonment. There's a difference between murder and manslaughter. Murder, of course, without extenuating circumstances, including provocation, for instance, it's a capital offense. And upon conviction, the person is sentenced to face the hangman. Manslaughter, of course, is an involuntary act. The person is driving dangerously and recklessly and hits a pedestrian, and the pedestrian passes away. That becomes manslaughter. So treasonable felony isn't the same thing as treason. And but I'm not quite, because I've seen all kinds of claims, you know, in the media as part of the post-election tension that we've been seeing around. I thought I should just mention that.
In case of just a minute, my brother. Kingsley, just about a month ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, we said that the judiciary desk of the newsroom is not what it was.
That's right. I remember I raised that.
It's very important,
yes, I raised that,
the point
yes.
you just raised.
Yes, I made that. Thanks. And I think that that's even obvious, Kira, because sometimes when you are reading reports from the courts, it's laborious. And you get into the meat, you just find a reporter is busy saying that you, assuming there are 100 counts against a defendant, you will list the 100 counts.
No.
And some of those counts are repetitive. Just go to the essence
Exactly.
of what it is. And Or some others will say, in the inverted pyramid style, get on with the most serious allegations. That is to say, the charges have been drafted against the individual. And you don't have to say that to you. You say the first paragraph that you are just reproducing the charge sheet.
Actually, I call it a scary challenge to news writing. And I'm one of those that are easily scared away from it. Killian, you were talking.
For me, these are some of the issues we've raised a number of times, on this platform. The way we write, the way we perceive situations, the way we make representations in terms of the words, the use of words. I say treasonable felony. Me, I just say, if not for Kingsley's explanation, for me, that means because they always use interchangeably.
Yes.
Like in the case of Trump, for instance, they say please not guilty on 34 felony counts. Right, so it's not treasonable yet. If I understood the what Kingsley said, so
his own does not felony close to treason.
Yes, So when such statements are made, I don't understand that. Now Finland joins NATO.
Kyria, very quickly. You've raised a very important point. President Trump is facing now a 34 count charge for felony. Felony, there are two categories of offenses against the law. One is a misdemeanor,
which is a bit mild,
which is a minor offense. Yes. And then a felony is a serious offense. Yes. And then there are categories of felonies, just as we are saying. And the highest category of a felony, of course, is a capital offense, treason. Murder.
And they say this is a criminal offense in the first place.
No, it's criminal. That's what I said that's the category. They don't say that they are going to name it.
No. And they even emphasize the fact that he's the first American former president and first serving president to be arraigned on criminal charges, right? And when of course you talk about the falsification in terms of his business records, that's number one. Another one has to do with inciting people, on the last January 6th stuff that he did at the Capitol. All right, and I'm not sure we have other things to look at this morning.
I don't think we have the time.
Yeah, Finland joins NATO. Russia protests. At the incipient of this invasion of Ukraine, I did mention here, I was with Kingsley, perhaps off air, that it was a great error, for that attack to occur in the first place. Because if you want to deter a nation from joining NATO, the action of Russia has even made it in fact, some nations are imperative now to join NATO in that area. Finland has joined. Many other people are seeking
Sweden
is also there. So they want to see a situation where because they feel they're not safe because these are giants living bothering them, and anything can happen at any time. And the attack is it's very ferocious. So
actually, the NATO helmsman was saying that Putin set out to bring about less NATO, and ended up having NATO in preponderance. When Sweden joins now, it's like they are surrounded now. The Baltic states, remember Lithuania, Latvia, and what's the other one? Estonia. Already in there.
Well, that's fine. So you are saying that it is well for these states and other previous members or existing members of NATO to defend themselves.
It is well for them to.
It is well for them to defend themselves.
Exactly.
And then it will be unwell for Russia to also be concerned about its own security.
No. You can be concerned, but don't attack.
There are mutual concerns. A nation will always do things to preserve its own life. Each of them has a case. It's the handling of the matter that usually goes awry. That's the point.
Russia has always been an enigma to the rest of Europe. And that, of course, it's going to be deepened now with the enlarged membership of NATO. Don't expect any peace anytime soon.
It's not going to come.
In that region.
It's not going to come.
The Russians believe that they are a target to be extinguished by other powers.
Yeah.
And now they will dig in and you will see what is going to happen.
Okay, let us conclude. Let me just tell you this, that, a tree cannot make a forest. When you have nations, when I mean nations, high, powerful nations, with one of the best infrastructure when it comes to military defense, instruments. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot just be yourself alone and you're fighting over 50 countries. It's not going to be possible. But the point is this: attacking a nation is what is wrong. You can think of protecting yourself or whatever it is, but when you start attack by yourself, it becomes
actually a my opinion is that Russia does not like what it calls a unipolar world, where only the United States seems to be.
On that note, on that note, I don't want to take you to perestroika and glasnost. That happened there. It didn't happen in America. All right, we conclude this segment. Tomorrow we'll be back on the same segment. That's the Newspaper Review. For now, let's take a short break. We'll be back very shortly. You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Now, before we continue our conversation on fifth alterations of 1999 Constitution on railway, here is a packaged report put together by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
Recently, the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari assented to the amendment of 16 bills, meaning the visibility of the fifth alteration of the 1999 Constitution. One of these bills is the amendment of the Nigerian Railway Act 1955, which now moves the railway transportation from exclusive to concurrent list, creating the avenue for the states to be in control of the train services in their domains. States will now be able to make laws regulating establishment and operation of rail services within their territories, while interstate rail will remain the federal government's responsibility. Many say moving rail development to the concurrent list emphasizes the government's demonstration of its commitment to the consolidation of the Nigerian Railway Development Master Plan. The indication of this is that the Abuja Rail Mass Transit, commonly known as Abuja Light Rail, will be controlled by the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, while the Lagos Blue Line Rail will be under the authority of the Lagos State Government. Experts in rail transportation believe the states are sitting on new opportunities as the law now empowers states to own, design and operate rail systems. What level of growth will this bring towards the development of the country? And how well, indeed, can the states utilize these opportunities? These are some questions guests already seated will be answering shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. Now, with us in the studios to discuss the implications of the transfer, if you like, or the relocation of railways from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list, we have with us in the studios Roland Atagoba. Atagoba is Managing Director, CEO of Bethlehem Rail in London. Atagoba, we're glad to have you in our studios this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, also here with us in the studios is Dr. Aminu Musa Yusuf, Deputy National President of the Chartered Institute of Transport and Logistics. Dr. Aminu Yusuf, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nigeria. And with us at the Makurdi Network Studio is Mani Ochuboju, a transport consultant and legal practitioner. He's also a regular on our show. Good morning, Mani, and welcome to the program today.
Good morning, Korean. Good morning, viewers.
All right, Mani, we're glad that you are with us. Mani is a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, of course, along with Roland Atagoba. The last time we tried to get you, you were at the airport and the Zoom connection wasn't quite crisp. But let's commence the conversation straight away. There had been agitations over the years for the removal of the monopoly status, if you like, of railways in the country on account of the placement of railways under the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list. That has now happened with one of the amendments to the Constitution and the subject matter that we've been discussing. Yesterday, our focus was on the electric power sector. We've also discussed the prisons, now correctional services, along, of course, with a bouquet of other amendments. So beginning with Roland Ataguba, is this a new deal, potentially and actually?
Oh yeah, it's a game changer. We've been advocating for this for a very long time, and it's fantastic that it's happened. In fact, the Constitution amendment, of all the reform and restructuring advocacy we've been doing about railways, going back nearly 20 years now, so it's not new. The Constitution amendment was deemed as the more difficult to do, and we went ahead with the Railway Act to amend the Railway Act. And it's turned out now that we've been able to get the Constitution amendment through, whilst the Railway Bill remains pending. So all effort is now going to concentrate on having the Railway Act passed or amended. Now, in terms of what next or implications of it, I mean, basically, we've opened up the space. States or subnational governments and private investors can now come into the railways as investors. And we're also encouraging competition because the NRC monopoly status is essentially being broken now.
Okay, well, thank you. I think as we make progress in this conversation, there are issues we've raised now, which it's hard for us to re-dissect, for our viewers to understand where you're coming from as a professional. Because, of course, over the years, we've always known Nigerian Railway Corporation, where states do not make any contribution to its operations or ownership. Okay, let's bring in Dr. Aminu Musa Yusuf here now. This is a giant stride, for some Nigerians, who believe that this is a game changer when it comes to rail transportation in the country. Right. Now, states have always cried out of having insufficient funds, to run their states in terms of different sectors of our national life that the states have to focus on and deal with. How do you think that the subnational governments will make effect or will make a positive, input into what has now been removed from the exclusive to concurrent list? That's bringing them in to be part of the rail system. Do you think it's a possibility, being in transport for a long time now?
Yeah, thank you, Kieran. I would say states have been yearning, of course, for rail development, especially those that have metropolitan areas like Lagos. Kano is trying to bring in some also rail mass transit. Even Kaduna, my state, have been trying to bring in rail transport. Without this particular concurrent list, they cannot be able to do that in a, smoothly, because there is monopoly, like engineer has said. Nigerian Railway Corporation was established in 1955. Well, the Act 1955. The Gazette came out in 1965. Initially it was during colonial period. Lagos government, Lagos Railway that time, they were constructing right from Lagos up to Baru, up to Mina. Then Northern Nigeria government constructed up to between Kano and Baru. Then they are merged in that year, by that act. Now this concurrent list, before when it was exclusive, railway is the owner. Railway is the operator. Railway is the regulator. And for you to build a railway line, you have to acquire right of way, which only federal government can do that in those days. So now states, I'm sure with this particular action, they may not be able to construct intercity, rail development, maybe along the major corridors. Let's say linking Maiduguri to Port Harcourt or Enugu to where. But they will concentrate on intra-urban or intra-city rail development. Like Lagos, look at this Lamata. It's a concession, program. They just made the blue line. Now, other cities also may come up, especially the mega cities. Let's mention Port Harcourt, Kaduna, Kano, Abuja, even here, Abuja. Of course, it has been, developed, but it's still moribund. It's yet to come up fully, So I think that is the highest advantage.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Aminu Yusuf. Mani Ochuboju, let's bring you into the conversation now. Again, just a reminder to our viewers, sometimes Nigeria, we look for quick fixes. And just think that with this amendment, suddenly you'll have rail lines all over the country. And things will just change overnight. But as Roland Ataguba has indicated, this amendment to the Constitution is a game changer for the further development of rail services in different parts of the country that can afford such development. In your opinion, what are the likely positive scenarios emerging from this, short-term or long-term?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to add that on the short term, it is truly a game changer. It is historic. It is revolutionary. It transforms the industry instantly. It opens up the space. It opens up the opportunity for competition. It opens up the space for more investment, employment, and it gives every state the opportunity to participate in this industry. But more importantly, in addition to what Roland said, yes, the opportunity of transforming the industry may not be overnight because the nature of network infrastructure is such that it doesn't transform overnight. But generally, within 2-3 years, it can be improved upon. Secondly, in the short term, the states can improve on their transport infrastructure. I know states like Cross River, they already have monorail in works. I know a state like River State, they already have their own internal monorail at work. Lagos State seems to be the one everyone is talking about, but these are two states that already have real functional systems in place. Furthermore, I know that Oyo State was working on a similar project, but they ran into the issue of the monopoly of Nigerian Railway recently and it stalled. Now that will be dealt with. Metropolitan cities like Maiduguri, cities like Kano, cities like Kaduna may revisit this issue of trying to improve their own internal transport system. That is within a given state. It opens up the many opportunities that rails can be used. I know usually we think of rail, we only think of interstate. But rail can be used just as you use taxis and you use buses within a state, from one town, one village to another. And it can be very efficient. But that is within one state. But to add to what Dr. Yusuf said, that it will be hard to do interstate. No, not exactly. It may not be hard to do interstate. Interstate can also be considered by states that are close to themselves, that are states that are within a region. I'll give you one example. There was a project some years back, incidentally, which Roland was working on. And that project required the then 5 states of the eastern region. The states are Cross River, Benue, Taraba, Adamawa, and Borno to link up, to develop a rail line that will convey goods, services, and persons from Calabar all the way to Borno. And I recall, because of the monopoly of Nigerian Railway, and because of the difficulties of allowing others to get involved in the industry, that project failed. Now, this is a significant opportunity for a project like that to come on board. Not only can that project come on board at this point, it can also be linked to the national strategy on railway The National Strategic Vision on Railway requires that railway should be connected to all the state capitals. So you can connect from Calabar, for example, to Makurdi, where I am. From Makurdi to Taraba. You can have a sideline to other parts of the states. From Taraba to Adamawa. On your way to Borno, you pass through Yobe, Potiskum, and you have an interstate rail line organized by 6 states. So 6 states can collaborate and have an interstate. And so long as it falls within the national framework and strategic plan of the country, it is excellent. It will help. And I want to quickly add, Roland has been one of those that drove this project. Incidentally, as the saying goes, success has many fathers. But it is not fair that in a situation where a Nigerian citizen drives a bill, and then those that introduce the bill, are attributed with the credit. I know maybe out of modesty you may not want to say this, but I hasten to add it, partly to encourage legislative advocacy by ordinary citizens of Nigeria. And secondly, because sovereignty lies in the people of Nigeria. And sovereignty is derived from the people. The legislative powers which the legislators and the National Assembly exercises on our behalf. And Nigerians can introduce bills so that let it not look like an arcane, obscure, hard to obtain objective. So if, for example, Nigerian Bar Association has a legislative idea they want to promote, or maybe another organization like, let's say, universities, they want to pursue their university autonomy ideas, you can promote and develop a bill. And that is one example that we should encourage so that we don't leave lawmaking, policy making, national development in the hands of just a few people. But all said and done, this is an opportunity for states to be creative. It's an opportunity for states to open up their own industries. It's an opportunity for states to detach themselves from going to Abuja every other month to look for subvention. You can make a lot of money from railway. And I recall when this bill was introduced recently, a friend of mine called me from Utukpo saying, this is an opportunity for us to do something. I said, can we do something in Benue? He said, no. We have other states. It doesn't have to be just Benue. So it opens up the space for almost every Nigerian, regardless of where you are. Whether you are in Rivers, you are in Borno, you are in Sokoto, you are in Bayelsa, you are in Ondo State. This is an opportunity for you to be involved in the railway industry. And let's demystify railway. Railway is transportation. Transportation is what we use every day. As you use your motorbike, that's transportation. As you use your car, as you use your tricycle, that's transportation. And more importantly, let me quickly add this. It is the duty of Nigerian state, and indeed of all our sub-national states, to provide enabling environment for us to have transport facilities. It is a constitutional requirement. I know it will seem surprising to people. Oh yes, I think section 15, subsection 3. In the course of promoting national integration, you must provide sufficient, adequate facilities to enable free mobility of people, of goods and services. And what is free mobility of people?
All right, our guest there in Benue, Mani or Chubog, we're going to return to you in the course of the program. But you have very vital, points that you have made, gentlemen. Yes, monopoly broken. Again, railway transportation is a capital-intensive project, I had mentioned earlier the possibility of these subnationals having the funds to engage in that. Yes, you mentioned some states, Lagos, Port Harcourt. These are wealthy states in this country that we know. Cross River, you know, even Akwa Ibom could do that. That's just about 5 out of 36 states of the Federation. So for you to engage in railway at the subnational level, there has to be funds for it. And I want to bring in Roland here to say, look, how do you develop rail lines in a state that is poor, so to speak? Would it be necessary for states to engage in some kind of a partnership with foreign firms or foreign consortium and to be able to do that? Enugu State, where I come from, for instance, is one of the poor states in the southeast of Nigeria in terms of what they get on a monthly basis, from Abuja. Like thinking of engaging in rail line in Enugu, I mean, I'm not sure that can happen. We don't even have water, in the place. So, what would be the right step to take, by states to be able to engage in this?
Okay, thank you. Well, it's not just states, there are local governments, and then there are private investors. So you've got 3 categories of potential investors. What's wrong with 3 of them clubbing together? You can have a PPP with a private investor and a state government. Important thing is, do they have the need? Is there the requirement? You don't build railway just for the sake of railway. If you have a congested city like Lagos, then a metro makes sense. But you don't go to a place like, I don't know, perhaps I shouldn't name any states, but one with less dense population and hope that you can run a passenger railway successfully. Number one, you must make money. Otherwise, how do you cover your overheads? So you need for it to make business sense before you can embark on it.
Well, Atagoba, thank you very much for your explanation. Let me just drop this in before I pose my question to you. Kirian, you mentioned Lagos, for example, Lamata. Lamata idea came about during Bola Ahmed Tinubu's tenure as governor of Lagos. But there is a World Bank facility that was taken, I think it's a 25 or 30-year tenure for the repayment of that particular facility. So all of that Lamata, it was for intermodality, including what we now have as the exclusive corridor for BRT buses and then the light rail and all of that. It was all a composite. So, but the state government got that facility on account of the bankability of the project itself. Indeed. And as Atagoba was saying, I mean, if you have a metro service in Lagos, you can't, unless you are inefficient in running it, you must recover your costs going forward. But tell us something, because you are the CEO of the Bethlehem Rail Services in London. In that jurisdiction, or in other jurisdictions that you are familiar with, how is the rail service structured? Who are the players in the rail market?
That's a very big question. The British Railways were privatized during the tenure of Margaret Thatcher, and it ran into problems. The privatization model that was chosen was quite innovative, and it was quite it was really a game changer, and I think they took a lot of risks. And don't forget, money is not necessarily always efficient because there's a greed factor with investment, and therefore you need very robust regulation, which means that you have to understand the industry for you to regulate it in a manner that preserves the interests of users and the interests of other stakeholders. In the UK, the metro is run by the local government. For instance, the famous London Tube is run by the Mayor of London's office. He's really London's local government, so to speak. Intercity services are run by private operators, but the infrastructure belongs to the state. I mean, there's a state-owned network rail that owns the infrastructure. It's a tricky or funny kind of company because it is publicly owned, but it is profit-making, or it seeks to make profit. though not always successfully. But the model that we recommend for Nigeria is not quite, it's a kind of a hybrid of what obtains in the UK and Europe. And that would be where, for instance, the federal government owns the hard infrastructure, and then investors, which could be states or could be private investors, purchase or develop, acquire moving infrastructure, either rolling stock, take over depots, and so on and so forth, and run a service and make money. Of course, they will pay a fee for using the infrastructure, and of course, they would maintain that infrastructure for the period that they're running services on it. So essentially, the federal government takes a back seat. It provides, it's like a property developer. You develop property and you rent it, you lease it out to a tenant who pays you rent. That way, government can actually invest in building more infrastructure or use the funds it saves for other potential causes. Social needs, we've got huge insecurity challenges for which government may need more money, law and order, health issues. So government has a plethora of things that it needs money to do. And what we're doing is freeing those resources for government to apply. And also there's an efficiency that comes with private investment and with competition. Where you have monopoly, you have complacency, and you have the C word, corruption. We're trying to answer a lot of those questions by changing the narrative.
All right. Thank you indeed. You know, when you talk about private investors, investing in a public infrastructure or public project, it seems not to have worked very well in this country over the years. We started it with the toll gate system, remember? When the private individuals came into toll gate, and in the process, the toll gate system, went away, right? And there are also major projects, even by the previous administration in this country since 1999, where PPP was introduced, and then nothing worked. As a matter of fact, and we're beginning to see another, window, the opening for subnationals to engage in what, of course, hitherto was, monopolized by the national body. That's the National Railway, Nigerian Railway Corporation. All right. Roland talked about people who could invest in the process. And he mentioned private individuals. He told us that the London Tube is run by a mayor of London. And all that. You are into transport management. And how do you think this could work for Nigeria? The model which he's preferring for Nigeria, for instance, assuming states are interested in doing this, to see how can we engage the private sector to key into the project, and of course make the profit along the line. Because what really worries many private sectors in Nigeria, private sector operators in Nigeria, is because they're not sure, like this high level of uncertainty, in our business environment.
Yeah, thank you, Kyria. You see, PPP or any other model that can be adopted, it depends on the situation. In the case of rail transport, the capital investment is very huge, and the return on investment is very slow. So like Roland said, the model can be, government can construct the track, and then private individuals or subnationals can invest on the rolling stock, depending whether it is passenger services, whether it is freight services, But the bottom line is, whatever model is adopted, all right, the concession is the best, because you have removed inefficiency, because government or public, public cooperation is normally abused, especially in Nigeria. We will abuse it. Like you said, look at the toll gates. Look at NEPA, former NEPA. People are just abusing it. Nitel. But once you introduce private, I remember a story, 2001, I was in the US. We were on a study. The then President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, visited the Secretary of Transportation, on the Department of Transportation in New York and Washington, D.C. As soon as he left, the Secretary visited our school and he said, "Your President was here. Do you know what brought him?" We said, "No, sir." He said, he came to look for investors, American investors, to come and put money on Nigeria Railway. But do you know, we will not do it because rail transportation is very, very huge capital intensive, huge capital outlay. And they're not willing to come and stake their money where they're not sure of recouping. At least after 10 years. You put your money and tie it for 10 years before you start to see, some money coming. So that is, it means maybe build, operate, and transfer. Or operate, own, and transfer. It depends on the, agreement. So, but in Nigeria, to be much more practical, it's better to adopt American model whereby there's Amtrak, American track, I think something belongs to the, it belongs to the U.S. government. Then CSX and other companies operate, the services. Other private individuals, companies, but they pay money back to government for use of the track. So I think that would be the best approach in Nigeria, so that private people can bring in their rolling stock. Example, let's say Dangote, for instance, if he wants to move his cement across Nigeria, I think he was moving it before, but you realize that because the railway is so inefficient, the present NRC, that is not moving enough. The same thing with NNPC. I think we're one of these old companies. They are moving, their wet products from Lagos and from Port Harcourt up to Kano. So they're not moving up to 1% of the demand or of the required volume. Can you imagine? So if it were private, the track, of course, belongs to the federal government, but private, bring your trains, bring your coaches and wagons, operate it, and then there is hope that you can recoup your money quickly.
Okay. Dr. Aminu Yusuf, thanks a lot. Mani Ochubojo, I want to return to you. Well, we do know, again, as I've said in the course of our discussing some of the amendments to the Constitution under the 5th alteration, I've drawn attention to the fact that an amendment could just be a one-liner, but the implications run into hundreds or thousands of pages of real work. The amendment now provides a lot of opportunities. And many would argue that one of those opportunities will be to say, as we discussed yesterday on electricity, develop a new policy framework for, say, the rail industry. Now, because if you now have the rail industry with capacity for the federal, that's the national, and the subnational entities to be players in it, at some point you also have to need a regulator. So who is this regulator for the industry? That's one, in terms of policy. But Roland Ataguba mentioned something very critical. And he says that, look, in some jurisdictions, and Dr. Aminu Yusuf also referenced that, one entity, say the national government, may choose to invest in the hard infrastructure, namely the rail tracks, including the main lines and the spurs and all of that. And then the states or private individuals may then opt to provide the services for the use of those tracks, whether for passenger, cargo, or sometimes highly inflammable cargo such as fuel and all that. But it means also that you have to work out the markets to say how much do you pay and so on and so forth, who maintains. When can we begin to conceptualize the implications of issues of this nature to know how we proceed in terms of developing the policy framework under the New Deal?
The New Deal, policies will have to be reviewed, obviously. Presently, there is an existing strategic vision and a strategic policy. In fact, it was done 2006. It's a 25-year strategic plan. That strategic plan, as it is still relevant and it can still be applicable even with the dramatic change that have taken place in the industry. Most concurrent list provides for the federal government to provide strategic vision, strategic direction, and policy direction. Federal government can only provide that direction as it is, and then the states can queue in. So presently, the subnationals can queue into the existing policy direction, the existing strategic vision, and the existing national plan. The national plan as it is even covers the states anyway. So it doesn't exclude them. The only thing that it may provide now is that the subnationals within their own state can add to the structure that has been proposed. So as it is, not a lot can change dramatically overnight. So I think the existing master plan can still run for a few years before it is reviewed. Secondly, as regards regulation, you recall Roland mentioned the plans to review the Nigerian Railway Act. That Nigerian Railway Act, when it is finally reviewed, incidentally, under the new dispensation, the issue of regulation, the authority to regulate it, will be desegregated from Nigerian Railway, hopefully, and it will be more organized, more streamlined, and it will give the state nationals a template if they need to set up a similar structure to regulate their own subnational rail infrastructure to use. So that will give a template of what to use. So there will be symmetry nationwide. Whichever state wants to use the particular regulatory framework in setting up their rail infrastructure. Yes, I agree with Roland and I agree with Yusuf. The easy way forward is for the states to invest in the hardware, the infrastructure, the rail track itself, the stations, the building, the land, the right-of-way. The states own the land anyway. So it's very easy for them to allocate land for a railway line. Very easy. In fact, it's easier for the states to provide land for rail tracks than the federal government. So, because of the Land Use Act that gives the control of land to a state governor, he can very easily, by providing compensation, allocate land for rail tracks very quickly. So they can invest jointly with private sector. I'm not a fan of private sectors, but then we're in a new world. So private sectors can come in. Yes, I understand in the past private sectors are hesitant to enter Nigeria. But then the private sector we are referring to doesn't have to be foreign anyway. We have billionaires in Nigeria that can decide to invest. We have them investing in power. We have them investing in cement. We have them investing in telecommunication. I'm reaching you in Abuja right now through investments by Nigerians in telecommunication. Those Nigerians can come and invest in railway industry. They can invest with government. Government may provide some guarantees, and then they concession the operations to the private sector. Let's simplify this thing. Yes, it is expensive, but if you put in proper regulatory checks, the things that make contracts expensive in Nigeria can be eliminated or reduced. It is inconceivable that infrastructure should be so expensive in Nigeria anyway, let's face it. You go to a place like Ghana, the railway line is 3 times cheaper than it is in Nigeria. Go to Tanzania, go to Kenya. So it is unacceptable that railway infrastructure and other infrastructure should be expensive in Nigeria. Railway can be made cheap. I think we have to put that in mind. And we have to guide our policymakers in that direction. Especially now that states with meager resources will now have to invest in railway. How do I tell Governor Tom to go and bring $20 billion to invest in railway? Now we have to tell him, bring 1 billion, bring 2 billion. That will make sense. So we have to be frugal in the use of our resources. And that will encourage them to come in. And then those who will partner with them, they will get a state guarantee on returns on their investment. If Adenuga or Dangote wants to come and invest in Benue today, he understands that he'll get his money back if Governor Tom gives some guarantee to it. And he gets a reasonable assurance that he'll get his money back. So I respectfully propose that we can reduce the cost of infrastructure. We can bring private sectors, and they don't have the private sectors from London and USA. We can bring private sectors from other parts of Africa. We can bring private sectors here in Nigeria. Go to Lagos. Go to Kano. In fact, look around. There are people in Nigeria here with money to invest. Create the enabling environment for them to bring out the money they are hiding under their bed. Let them come and invest in railway. The money is safe. More importantly, we create a situation where these investments and this infrastructure is sustainable. Like Roland said, you don't build railway for the sake of railway. You build railway because it's sustainable. You build railway not just to carry passengers. You build railway to carry freights. So in carrying freights, it may augment any weaknesses or financial deficits that you may experience with the passenger services. And I think we have to encourage this idea. The railway is sustainable. But more importantly, is this the only way to go? In fact, it's a national challenge for Nigeria. If we are the giant of Africa, how many mileage of railway tracks do we have? 3,500? 3,500. Shame on us. Shame on us. Those in charge of developing this industry must make sure we ramp it up to at least 50,000. Why? South Africa has over 10,000 tracks. I don't want to start mentioning other countries. I'm just using South Africa as an example. Because economically, in terms of competition, they are the closest to us. But you have countries like Egypt with 7,000, Kenya, 7,000, Algeria, 7,000, Morocco, 7,000, which is twice our rail mileage. So it is a challenge that the next time we are discussing railway, with states getting involved in this industry, we should have enriched it, and we should be taking a pride of place as one of the leading railway industry in Africa. Things we do in Nigeria, we should not forget. Other African countries are looking at us. I don't want to talk about our election and other things, but let's look at industry, for example. And looking at what is Nigeria doing? What is Nigeria's capability? We can build a railway line from here all the way to connect to Chad. To connect, we're already connecting to Niger, which is fantastic. And I quickly...
all right, Mani Ochubogu, you have another opportunity to speak, especially to some of the points you raised, and we need further explanations. You see, we were talking about monopoly of the industry for a very long time by Nigerian Railway Corporation. Sir, railway went comatose around middle of 80s to the 90s. Before perhaps a Johnson administration came on board to say, look, let's start doing something. For me, it was just crashed. Now this administration came on board and took it very seriously. Now, considering the funds, as a matter of fact, it was a loan from China, and that is even making us seem as if we're making a very giant stride, in this industry. It's a sort of loan. And I want to ask Roland to talk to us about the possibility of these states, coping with the enormity of the kind of funds that are required to run a railway line. If you are given the opportunity to design or structure a rail infrastructure for a particular state in Nigeria, and perhaps attract funding for it, will it be a possibility, considering the fact that, look, corruption is in the system? When you talk about private sector involvement in the public sector, it's usually a huge challenge for them because of the corrupt system, in which case they will believe that, look, I'm not going to get return on investment after all said and done because of corrupt practices of those that will be, operating the system. All right, and that is the reason why we've not succeeded very well in PPP arrangement in this country for over 20 years now. And now, Mr. Roland, where do we take it from here? As to say, look, if my state says I want to do this, and okay, you bring a plan, a proposal, or what have you, a blueprint on it, what is the possibility of implementation?
Very good question, and it is a difficult one to answer because it isn't just a railway question. It is a Nigerian question. The environment has to be ripe, and there are other considerations. If you have these insecurity concerns, as we do now in Nigeria, it's a disincentive for investment, whether foreign or local. And so you need to have a situation where, for instance, you can have reliance on your police service, your fire service, i.e. the emergency services are functional. That's not a railway issue in case you have incidents. And so these are various indices that an investor will look at. It's not just about, because he needs to sit down somewhere. Just like Dr. Yusuf has said, it's going to take him 12 years to recover his money. He needs to know that there will be stable government. He needs to know that the legal system is robust enough to deal with disputes, and so on and so forth. So it's not that cut and dry. There's a lot of work for us as Nigerians to do.
Well, again, to back up to what, gentlemen, you have touched on, nobody would expect an investor to, for instance, under our prevailing circumstance, be the one to construct rail tracks. To say, oh, I'm coming, I want to build the rail tracks, because they're your right of way, which is probably the biggest investment you can have in land. The entire mileage of the rail tracks will belong to a private investor. So we're talking about the services that will run, for instance, on the rail tracks. And I'm just wondering, because you hear models of how public works can be activated as a job creator. And many would argue, for instance, that the construction of new rail tracks in new environments actually would amount to public works, for which the government says this is what we are going to do. If you want to remove subsidy, and all the 3 tiers of government contribute to the subsidy that we are all said to be enjoying, instead of saying you want to take out of that subsidy to go and buy buses that would probably off-road after 2 or 3 years, or use it to make conditional cash transfer, we could very well say, look, let us extend the mileage of our rail infrastructure in terms of roads. And rail line construction doesn't appear to be such a major challenge. I know that it is costly considering the length you have to go through, and of course if you are now in a difficult terrain or you have to build bridges and it's a standard gauge. I think some of the critical things you see there, we import our steel, but the granite that you see, the slippers that you would have, it's not a big deal, should it be, Mr. Taguba?
No, it isn't. But you also omitted in your narrative one category of private investor. It's known as the miner.
Sure.
That drives railway development no end. And Nigeria is a resource-rich country with solid minerals all over the place. Miners are a particular segment of society that actually build their own infrastructure. They're totally self-reliant. because their business runs into huge tons of money. And I mean, you could have, it was in fact the solid minerals, it was on the back of the solid minerals that the colonialists built the existing track infrastructure we've got for lifting coal in the east, from lifting cocoa in the west, and the famous granules from the north, and cotton and so on and so forth, and tin, of course, in Jos. And a lot of that was defined by where goods were, and of course, you headed to the ports because they were exporting raw materials. What we now need to do is to build on that. We don't want, number one, to be exporting raw materials anymore. We must add value to these things. We must set up refineries for our minerals. And the miners do that eloquently. They build their track, maybe to a beneficiating plant, where they add value to the material, and probably even move it further to a manufacturer that finishes the product. And I think it was Manny in his contribution that referred to manufacturers, cement manufacturers like Dangote, Bois, Lafarge. These guys have enough business that railway just enhances their distribution network. Then you've got, what do you call them? Port operators. We've got guys like down in Lagos, you've got AP Mola. They were in fact part of the GE consortium that wanted to, that sought the consortium, sorry, the concession of the narrow gauge railway. A big shame that that fell through, but that was a perfect opportunity for us to get private industry into our railways in a constructive and useful way. Hopefully, that opportunity shall arise again. Okay.
Thank you. Well, we'll still have our guest, Manuel Chibogu, in Makurdi studio, Dr. Aminu Yusuf here in the studio, of course, Roland Taguba as well. We're discussing the 5th alterations of 1999 Constitution on railway. Well, Mani raised a number of issues that I'd like him to tackle when we return from this break, and that will include the strategic direction or strategic policy on rail development as it affects subnationals, whom, of course, is on record that subnationals have not really participated or rather followed the key steps by federal government on most concurrent items in this country. We will dwell on that when we return from this short break. Do stay with us. Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. Before we come to Dr. Aminu Yusuf, let's return to Mani Ochibogo. Mani, you raised some points in your second comment to say that, look, that there is a strategic direction for rail development in Nigeria, and there should also be policy direction. Now, you made mention of states keen into federal government policy as a way of achieving the objective of any sector, not just the rail line. But in the past, we know that some other items, such as health and others, there are on concurrent list that the subnationals hardly adhere to federal government policy, simply because perhaps if the federal government is run by a particular state, a particular party, and the states are an opposing party, they don't key into federal government policy, simply because of party differences. Now, how will this play out in this issue of rail system being put on a concurrent list? Do you think that there will be a change of heart with respect to states adhering to policies that could, enable or facilitate whatever action taken by the president with respect to, ensuring that states can as well embark on rail development?
I'm optimistic that there will be a change of approach from the subnationals as regards railway. Railway is a particular kind of road transport infrastructure. There are particular standards. You have the narrow gauge, you have the standard gauge. The present policy direction now is usually towards standard. If every state is developing own internal railway system, that's what economic sense for a low standard gauge. A standard gauge that can bypass.
All right. It looks like we're having a connection challenge from our Makurdi network. From our Makurdi out, and then we come back to the studios. Dr. Aminu Yusuf. Well, it's a new deal, and Atagoba says a game changer. Congratulations to all of us. But we know that there are also other players in the logistics subsector of the economy, those who are involved in haulage. And I've said it a couple of times on Good Morning Nigeria, that Dr. Samuel Ogbemudia, who was a military governor of the old Midwest, was appointed sole administrator of the Nigerian Railway Corporation by General Ibrahim Babangida, who was then military president. And Ogbemudia started doing a few things, and positive results. And some of the road transport owners were said to have gone to him to say, congratulations on what you are doing, we are seeing your handwork. But those trucks that you see on the roads, we took facilities for them. If the railways work, how are we going to be able to repay our money, our debt? And we also got to know eventually, because this was a published interview, that what made him resign was that a gunman entered his office and threatened him. So he left. How then do we accommodate the road transport mafia in this new change that is likely to occur?
Thank you, Kinsley. You see, Nigeria is a very complex society. And that is why we're in this quagmire, in this vicious circle of corruption, which leads to poverty. Poverty leads to insecurity, you know. Before Ogbemudia, there was rise of India. That was the golden age of railway in those days. Trains were resuscitated and were moving on time up to early 80s, you know. But during Ogbemudia, of course, is another good time for the railways. Now, this road mafia, their fear is that most of them will be out of business. So they'll do everything possible to see that they scuttle whatever government is bringing in terms of railway. But in fact, you know, by virtue of my office, I was in contact with NRTW, Return, and others, or NATO, you know, all these long haulage people who move goods from Lagos up to Senegal by road. Yes, we were in contact with them in those days. And even when Abuja was proposing a mega railway from Lagos to Accra to integrate Nigeria and Ghana in those days, you know, which never saw the light of the day, of course. So the road hauliers, we have been telling them, you are not in competition with railway. That's what we call coordination. There are best services to be offered by railway, and there are best services to be offered by road. Long distance is cheaper if you go by train. Of course, it's slower, you know. Train is slower than road, you know. Maybe when in those days, rail was going at 50 kilometers per hour, 60 kilometers per hour on the narrow gauge. Now on the standard gauge, it's going up to 120 kilometers per hour. You know. Then bulk goods also, even palletized, they can still go on rail. Now, if they are for short haulage within the nation, or from warehouse to market, you know, that is the logistics, from depot to the market, point of consumption, it's best to be carried by road. I remember in those days when we were children, all these railway sidings, in Zaria, my locality. You see all these JB Oliver and all these people, they all have railway sidings connected to their own warehouses. It's just to evacuate the products to Lagos for export. But finished products, UAC, you see today they have concession, well, they have engaged logistics companies like Roadmarks and others to be distributing their finished products. Nigeria breweries, they have engaged so many private, trucking companies to be distributing their finished products. Even Dangote, it's only because he's having his own in-house truck. He has over 5,000 or 10,000 trucks, even Boa cement. So where the competition? So if the rails are going very fine, cement can move over long distances. Let's say from Abuja maybe to Lokoja, where the train services are provided, or even to Itakwe. Then from there, if the train services are up to Kano, then they can just offload a train. Then from there they go to. That's what we call intermodalism. So you move, cement, even bulk or in bags. First of all, from the factory site in Wajano to Lokoja by road. Then from there, the own has finished. Then from Lokoja to distribute across the nation. So there's no any competition. So what we call is coordination. But because it's inherent in us, in Nigeria, that we feel this might want to deny me my bread. So if trains are moving fine, it means all trucks will stop. No, they will not stop. Look at all these petrol tankers, for instance. The petrol and gas are better distributed by pipeline, for instance. It's the safest and it's more efficient. But from depot to filling station, it must be moved by truck. So tankers will now move them from the depot, the PPMC, to the filling station. That is what is happening all over the world, not only in Nigeria.
Yes.
But people seem to have competition. Why?
Well, as we always say, the Nigerian factor. But I wonder why we should allow that to eat into the fabric of the society. Nigerian factor. What works elsewhere does not work here. It's just because of attitude. Just that's what I've just mentioned. All right. Let's return to Mani or Chubogu. Mani, your audio line has been restored, and you can continue from where you stopped. You were trying to address the issue of states collaborating or partnering with the federal government on the strategic direction on railways.
Very quickly, the infrastructure, they have standards, and it will be hard for a state to recreate its own standard. That's number one. And number two, when a matter is on a concurrent list, I think Section 4 of the Constitution suggests that there should be coordination, there should be concurrence. If the national level have given a direction or a guidance on a particular matter, it will be inconsistent for a state legislator or to do something to the contrary. So that is another area that will restrain divergence and cacophony within the rail industry. But more importantly, the rail industry is also a business. And being a business, the profit motivation of the investors will guide their thinking and will guide their work. They will also look at the prospects of expansion. If you are investing in railway in Benue, you will remember that Benue and Plateau used to be one state, and there's still some form of connection and prospects of connection. You may want to look forward to going to invest in Nasarawa State. You may also consider the possibility of investing in Plateau State. And therefore, the old Benue Plateau connection can be revived. So for a businessman investing in Benue, he will be thinking ahead. You don't go and bring narrow gauge to Benue State that is now obsolete, and then go and place standard gauge in Nasarawa State and in Plateau State. there will be a disconnect. So you keep your eyes on the prospects of what is possible. You keep your eye on the prospects of what is more profitable. So to that extent, it will reduce disharmony. Like you noted, it's an expensive enterprise. You don't want what you are investing from the meager resources of the state to go fallow or to go waste. You want to ensure that they are sustainable. So that will reduce the cacophony. That will reduce political differences. That will reduce distractions and diversions.
All right, Mane, thank you very much there for your interventions. Back to Roland Ataguba, let's get your closing thoughts. Clearly, there are lots of opportunities ahead. Opportunities for training, opportunities for employment, opportunities for having a new set of professionals to work in this subsector of the transportation industry. What do you think that we must avoid going forward?
Thank you very much. There's lots we must do. One is attitudinal, and it is advisable to all of us as citizens of Nigeria to see public assets as common property. It belongs to all of us. We have people sitting at NRC, spent their entire lives working there. They actually think they are entitled to NRC more than me, who hasn't earned a dime from NRC all of his life. But it's our tax dollars that sustain the NRC and such other public corporations. We have people vandalizing public assets, vandalizing railway track for selfish reasons. They want to do business, but you can't do illegal business. You can't stop. You need to stop stealing from all of us. And we need our government to enforce the law more effectively. People are committing crimes because they get away with it. Yes, it may be hard to do, but it's got to be done. That's why government exists, to protect us and our property from harm. On a more strategic level, I think we can govern ourselves better. I think we're inching forward. Some of the successes we're talking about, for instance, the Constitution Amendment, is long overdue. These are things we've been calling for a very long time. Yes, better than never, better late than never, but we've got to make hay while the sun shines. Still a lot for us to do.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Aminu Yusuf, your final thoughts on this matter?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think like what Roland said, we're clapping now. We're happy that at least we have achieved one thing. The constitutional amendment, it has set the background now for better things to come. It's like what they call the low-hanging fruits. We have just harvested the low-hanging fruit. By the time the act is repealed and a new one reenacted of railway, that is when the functions of railway will be redefined. Everybody will know what to do. And a new regulator will have to come up, maybe the National Transport Commission. When the operators will change, the owners will change, of course, from NRC to maybe...
National Transport Commission.
Transport Commission is coming too.
What will be operating in the states? Remember?
No, it can cascade now in the National Transport Commission, like the regulator of the rail transportation. So right?
You should have a state version.
Yes, it will cascade.
Lamata
it will be initiated.
Okay. Lamata is the...
It will be very clear in the in the act, actually. So whatever is happening at the national or at the center, it will cascade down to the state and even the local government. So when that happens, I'm sure things will change, And the vandalization, of course, it may reduce because once we improve our security and we improve the surveillance, and then we improve the condition of the ordinary man to reduce poverty. Because how can somebody go and steal railway knot on the track? The knots, but they go to remove them.
Some are also born out of greed.
Yes,
not just poverty.
exactly.
Yes. Thank you, because a non-professional cannot remove those. That plot, they cannot remove it. All right,
Thank you very
gentlemen.
much.
Kinsley, I think we have to call it a day here.
Absolutely.
And I would like to thank Roland Altagova, Managing Director, CEO, Bethlehem Rail, London.
Thank you.
We're going to replicate that in Nigeria here.
Thank you, thank you.
All right.
My pleasure.
Dr. Aminu Yusuf, Deputy National President, Chartered Institute of Transport and Logistics, and former DG of NITT. Thank you indeed for coming.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Manuel Chubago, Transport Consultant and Legal Practitioner. It's been a pleasure talking to you from Makuri, the capital of Benue State. It's been wonderful listening to you this morning. All right, now let's take a bit of sports before we conclude today's program.
Nigerian para-table tennis players soared in the latest rankings released by the International Table Tennis Federation. This comes after their exploits at the recent 2023 ITTF Masters Para Open in Italy, where they won 2 silver and 2 bronze medals at the 4-day F20 Ranking Point Championships. Boale Akingbemisilu, a silver medalist at the tournament in Italy, was the biggest mover in the world in men's class 5 of the latest ranking, as he became the only African to climb into the top 7 in the world after amassing 1,145 points. And former light welterweight world champion Amir Khan has been handed a 2-year ban from all sports after testing positive for a prohibited substance, UK anti-doping said on Tuesday. Khan, 36, returned a positive result for the anabolic agent of Sterling following his loss to Ken Brook in Manchester in February 2022. The ban is deemed to have commenced on 6 April 2022 when its provisional suspension was imposed and will expire on April 5, 2024. Meanwhile, Fulham's Alessandro Mitrovic has been given an 8-match ban by an independent commission after pushing referee Chris Kavanagh in their FA Cup loss at Manchester United. The Serbia striker received a 3-match ban for the sending of, 3 for violent conduct, and an additional 2 for improper, abusive, insultive and threatening language. He will also receive a €75,000 fine. Fulham manager Marco Silva will serve a 2-match ban after he was sent off.
That's Good Morning Nigeria for us today, and we thank you for being with us. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kyrian. I'll see you again on Friday.